let's talk about cat and cow. So moving between cat pose and cow pose is kind of the quintessential spinal movement in yoga. And at its most basic, you're moving your spine and also your shoulders and your hips in coordination with your breath. And that in and of itself is lovely, so valuable, and can be really helpful for helping your spine and your back muscles to feel really, really good. But there are so many different ways we can do cat and cow. And if you take gentle yoga class with me, you've learned at least half a dozen, probably more, different things we can do using cat and cow to help us to move better and feel better, right? And so what I'd like to show you today is using cat and cow to explore what I call segmental movement of the spine. And so in this, we're thinking about all of the different joints between your vertebrae from the base of your spine all the way up to the top of your cervical vertebrae, the top of your neck, and thinking about moving each segment of the spine as you move from cat and cow. And to start with, I like to break it down and see if we can move the three sections of the spine independently. And so you might enjoy having a blanket for this to place over your back. It can be a little bit awkward to do yourself. If you have someone to give you a hand, that can be even better. Or you're welcome to practice without the blanket. You might notice I have another blanket here to pad my knees, so that's an option as well. And before I get started, I'll just say if you cannot be on hands and knees, there are lots of other ways that you can work on these different movements of your spine. Please reach out if you need some ideas. So for cat and cow, at its most basic, we're going to place the hands on the floor, place the knees on the floor, and come into a place where we are centered between the hands and the knees. And then the basic movement for the pose most commonly is taught with an exhale to arch the spine into cat pose, tucking the tail, letting the spine arch up towards the ceiling like a rainbow, and letting the head hang. And then an inhale to move into cow pose, where the head and tail come up at least a little bit. And there's a melting down through the chest and the abdomen. To do this movement segmentally, we're going to focus first on the part of the spine that is between the rib cage and the tailbone. And sometimes it can be helpful, if you're having trouble feeling this, to place a blanket or some other kind of weight over the upper spine through the back of the rib cage, just to give you a little bit more awareness of this part of the spine, because this is the part of the spine that we're going to be keeping still. So keeping the spine under the blanket as much as possible, just in its regular starting position. We're going to think about starting by tucking the tailbone under and really feeling that movement travel segment by segment through the low back till you get up to about the bottom of the rib cage. And then we're going to go the other way. Tail comes up, lower back arches towards the floor, keeping this in a range that's comfortable and easy. And that blanket in the upper back might give you some feedback if you're moving up here. We're trying to keep the upper part of the spine still. And just see what happens. And then we're going to let the lower part of the spine be still. Move the part of the spine under the blanket. You're going to come into cat pose, arching up. You'll notice this part of the spine has pretty small movement here. And then coming towards cow pose, you're going to flatten the part of the spine under the blanket. We don't have a lot of back bend capability in this part of the spine, so we're not looking for a big curve down towards the floor. You more think about flattening out that part that is below the blanket here. And then after you've done that movement through the upper back, then you might play with moving the neck. Then we often move the neck more towards the base of the neck, so you can really think about nodding the head in towards the throat, getting some movement through the upper part of the neck as well as through the lower vertebrae of the neck. And so those are working the different segments of the spine independently. You then might come and do some full spine cat and cow, but just really being mindful of those different segments of the spine moving one at a time. Although, of course, we can't move one joint at a time, they're all connected. But really taking your time to feel that movement going through segment by segment. And of course, as you come the other way, same thing. And just noticing what wants to move, what struggles to move, what struggles to be still. Lots to experiment with there. I hope you enjoy it. Do move in a range that's comfortable for you and follow any guidelines you've been given for spinal movement. And I hope you find this really helpful. I'd love to hear how it goes.